Hi, and welcome. This is the very first episode of the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast. My name is Jody, and I'm the host and creator of this show. I created the show to help stop the stigma surrounding mental health and to promote open and candid discussions about mental health. I also hope to let people know that however they may feel, there is always someone out there feeling the same thing. You are definitely not alone in your thoughts. Each episode, we'll talk with sufferers, caregivers, authors, therapists, speakers, and more about any and all aspects of mental health. We'll have a deep look into the issues that 1 in 4 people deal with and how having or caring for someone with a mental illness has affected their lives and the lives of those around them. I will be releasing this podcast once every 2 weeks on opposite weeks that I do my blogs, which would be at jodyb2016.wordpress.com or at sicknotweak.com. I will be issuing a trigger warning before each episode, as some people may be highly sensitive to the topics we are discussing. I would like to thank you in advance for taking your time to listen, and hopefully all together we can learn something new and open up the conversation and lessen the stigma. Since this is my first time hosting, and to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm going to say please excuse any slip-ups I may have, and please excuse any editing errors. I am still learning the editing program. Okay, since the show is called Raw and Open, I thought that on this first little episode, I should share with you a little bit about myself. I'm a trauma-informed coach, a peer mentor, and soon-to-be certified crisis specialist. I am also a writer and mental health and suicide prevention advocate. So, since the show is called Raw and Open, I thought I better start with a little bit about myself. I am a trauma-informed coach, peer mentor, and soon-to-be certified crisis specialist. I am also a writer and mental health and suicide prevention advocate. Although I have been depressed for as long as I can possibly remember, I was not diagnosed until about 5 years ago when I was given the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, and general anxiety. The combination of all these illnesses have literally cost me friends, family, and jobs. And I am currently living on disability until I can find a better way to cope, manage my thoughts and feelings, and hopefully get back to work. I had a hell of a lot of trauma before the age of 18 months. I was in 5 foster homes total, and 4 of them I was removed for neglect or abuse. One specific incident that I vaguely have some terrorizing memory of is of drowning in the bathtub, and that was confirmed when I got my information from Children's Aid, probably when I was about 25 years old, and that probably explains my strong dislike for having a bath. When I was 18 months, I was adopted into my parents' home. Everything there was pretty decent as far as I can remember until I was about 5, and at that point in time, domestic abuse started to occur in my house on a pretty regular basis, which led to me spending much of my time trying to comfort my mom, reversing the roles really as I became a parentified child, because I spent so much time outside of the house to escape the shit that was going on in the house. I was molested from the age of 5 to the age of 14 by multiple perpetrators, all men, and ranging in age from 16 to 45. That was back in the 70s, and children were not monitored as they are now. It was considered relatively safe to let your child go out and play for the day at the park without parental guidance, as long as they were, hanging out with a couple of friends. It was literally assumed that nothing would happen, which unfortunately in my case was not the truth. I was vulnerable, I was young, I was unattended, and I paid the ultimate consequence for 14 years. Now, you gotta understand, this was back in the 70s, and basically what happened is every family liked to present a pretty picture, paint themselves very well from the outside, but the insides were all falling apart, and that too was the case at my house. There was no discussion whatsoever of the domestic abuse. There was not even the possibility of me mentioning sexual abuse, because to be quite honest, I was too busy trying to take care of my mom and prevent the domestic abuse from happening. And unfortunately, I just could not do that no matter how hard I tried. I turned the anger and self-hatred and shame and everything else that goes along with sexual abuse inward as I had no outlet really. So when I was 8 years old was when I first overdosed. I knew what I was doing. I perhaps did not understand the complete long-term consequences, but basically I knew that if I took these pills, I would be dead, because that's what I had been told, not to touch the bottle because they would make me very sick or they could kill me. The event was obviously unsuccessful, but it did land me in the hospital for the night. And while I was there, basically the whole mess was chalked up to a case of childhood misadventure. There was no therapy, there was no talking about it. It wasn't even possibly in anyone's mind that a 8-year-old child could possibly attempt suicide. And so at my home, it was never spoken about again. The issue was done, closed, and finished. I started self-harming when I was very young as well, as a method of coping. And unfortunately, I continued that pattern on and off till I was really about 42 years old. Now, there were years where I was clean, very long, like 8-9 years at a time, but at some point in time, I had relapses up until my early 40s. I'm pretty well equipped now with a good toolbox of skills, so I have replaced self-harm with numerous other things, including tattooing, which covers my self-harm scars and also prevents me from self-harming again. Now, during this whole time, the domestic abuse, the sexual abuse, when I was 13, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she fought a very long and hard battle for 6 years. Unfortunately, she passed away on October 5th, 1990, and that day is literally burned into my memory like a tattoo. I find it funny that sometimes I cannot remember what I did or ate yesterday, yet I can remember every single detail down to the weather and what I was wearing on the day of my mom's death and on the day of her funeral. For those of you that know me, or for those of you who are just getting to know me, you will find that my mom's death day is literally like the point that I separate my life. So my memories are either pre-death or post-death. That's how I have marked things in my mind. After my mom's death, I wasn't really sure what to do with myself, so I traveled quite a bit through South America and tried to run away as far as I could from my problems and my pain and drown them in margaritas and sun and sand. Unfortunately, I found out that that doesn't work. Problems come with us wherever we go, unfortunately. There is no easy way around them. Mostly you just have to go through them. So after the traveling and the partying, and I had settled down, I'd gone to college and done 2 years at university, I still had no want or ability to deal with my past, so I just ignored it. I shoved it down my throat, and basically that led to 2 major suicide attempts and a handful of overdoses. Luckily enough, I survived them all somehow, but I still refused to go to therapy or take medication or admit that I had any sort of problems with depression or any other mental health issues. In my early 30s, I was still feeling pretty shitty, so I went on the search for a counselor. I went in search of a psychiatrist, and I went through about 5 counselors, and to this day right now, I am on my 12th psychiatrist. I have finally found someone that I like and acknowledges me and is very understanding and empathetic. And so far, my working relationship with her has been fantastic. And I look forward to working with her in the future, learning some new skills and techniques, covering a little more CBT and DBT. That's cognitive and dialectical behavioral therapy, which I am currently on a waiting list, which could be anywhere from 9 months to 18 months long. But when I finally go, it will be my first group experience, so to say that I am nervous would be a very large understatement. I am not big on groups. I'm pretty good at talking one-on-one or one on a very, very small group, but put 5 or more people together and my nerves are shot. However, to heal, I have to literally try anything and everything, and this is one approach I haven't done yet, so the worst I can do is try it, and if I don't like it, I'll just stop. I am also on medication for my depression and anxiety. There really is no medication per se for borderline personality disorder. Often they will give you a mood stabilizer of some sort, so your bouncing around is less often and perhaps less intense. But comorbid with BPD is depression and anxiety and numerous other things. So I have tried 12 medications, like combinations of different medications, and now I am on a new one which hopefully is working a little bit better. I've had a really hard time with regular medications like the average SSRI. It just sets me off. It doesn't sit well in my system, and I have a really hard time emotionally. So this new medication I'm on is in a different class of antidepressants, and it seems to be working a little bit and have a lot less side effects for me. And I know that unfortunately, in order to maintain my ability to live, I will probably be on medication for the rest of my life. And that is just something that I have grown to accept with a little bit of time. In most cases, borderline personality disorder is caused from some sort of severe repetitive neglect or abuse in early childhood. It actually malforms the brain in certain areas. The amygdala doesn't develop as well, which is the emotional center of the brain, which is probably why 90% of us are empaths, meaning we pick up other people's feelings. But the problem being is because we have borderline, we're also almost like raw to feelings. Every feeling seems so intense. There's so much emotion because the rational side of the brain and the emotional side of the brain are not working together. The bridges have been torn apart, or they were never built properly. And with therapy and neuroplasticity, we've learned that they can be rebuilt. It's just literally a matter of unlearning everything you've learned and then relearning new coping techniques. And when you do learn them, the neural pathways, they form themselves. So for those of you who don't understand or perhaps don't know somebody with BPD, it is basically like riding an emotional roller coaster 24 hours a day. Your ups and downs can be so intense and so rapid. Mood swings can happen literally 50 or 100 times a day. You're just bouncing all over the place with these unregulated emotions. You don't know what to do with them. It ends up in sometimes lashing out at people, or for some people who haven't learned any skills, it ends in self-harm. Suicide rates are huge among people with BPD. The attempt rate is enormous as well. Many people with BPD will go through moods of elevation. They'll go through feeling almost high, manic almost. I don't get that way. Because of my persistent depressive disorder, I flatline, and then I dip below the flatline, and then I go back up to the flatline. And that happens for me on average maybe 10 times a day or more if it's a bad day. It truly is really terrible to live with. The black and white thinking, so there's not much gray. Things are either this or they're that, when in fact there are two truths, but our brain is not yet able to handle them or put them together. For me, it also causes the constant need for reassurance, which is something that drives me nuts. I hate it. It is one of the biggest pet peeves I have about having this illness, and unfortunately it's not something that I have figured out how to overcome yet. However, that does not mean I have stopped trying. People with BPD also have a terrible fear of abandonment, whether it's imagined or whether it's real. It hits us like a brick wall. It hurts more intensely than I can possibly explain. Almost it would sound irrational to you because it barely makes sense to me. I do know that because of my past and not forming a nurturing bond when I was a young age, that abandonment is my absolute worst fear. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many times someone reassures me that they're not going to leave. There's still this nagging part in my head that's saying, you're going to leave, they're going to leave, they're going to leave, and not allowing me to get close to them, to open up to them fully, because I'm so afraid that if I do that, that they're going to end up leaving and I'm going to end up getting more hurt than I already am. This in itself is kind of like a game of tug of war, so it's very hard to get into relationships or friendships or maintain them. BPD people often become a little bit overbearing. We're kind of all in or all out. And again, because of that fear of abandonment, if you get too close and we think you're going to leave, we actually push you away before you can leave because we feel that's a little bit of control that we may have over the situation. However, we really don't want you to leave. And as soon as we've pushed you far enough away, we realize that and we immediately try to reel you back in. And not in a manipulative way, just in a way that, oh my God, what have I done? I didn't mean to push this person away. I didn't mean to say this. I'm full of regret and guilt. And what can I do to make up for the damage that I've caused? Now, I have learned and I'm still learning different techniques that allow me to control that impulsivity. Simple things like if a text that comes through upsets me because I interpret it the wrong way, instead of picking back up my phone and texting something irrational and likely hurtful, I've learned to actually turn my phone off or move it far away from me, take it to another room. So but by the time that I get to it, I've had at least 5 seconds to calm down, and sometimes you just need a few seconds to gain a rational thought back into an emotional mind. Now, even though I have a toolbox of new coping mechanisms, having a toolbox and implementing the tools quickly enough are two entirely different things. Obviously, they have to work together, but it takes a little bit of time to untrain your brain to have that instant reaction that it's had for so many years and replace it with something that's actually positive or healthy and that works for you individually. And even with that toolbox, I struggle daily with depression and suicidal thoughts. I say I've been passively suicidal for pretty much 40 years now. And although on some days the thoughts definitely get the better of me, my survival rate is 100% so far, so I guess so far so good. I found a really fabulous mental health community on Twitter. There's so much support there. People with every different ailment and illness and willing and open to talk in an unjudgmental and safe environment. I've met a lot of friends, more than I could possibly make in real life, I'm sure. And I've learned a lot from many people that I've met over the internet. And luckily for me, I have been able to make a few close friends that I can go to for support, judgment, encouragement, and a sense of safety. It is a place that even in your darkest of times, if you're really suicidal, if you reach out on Twitter and say how you're feeling, I promise someone will always reach back. The mental health community support is fantastic. There are specific support groups like hashtag BPD chat and hashtag PTSDI chat. There are also sites like sicknotweak.com, and Michael Landsberg, he does videos every day, mental health videos and encouragement videos, to basically spread the word around and make sure people know that it's okay to be not well. It's okay to accept that you're not well, and just because you're not well, that does not make you a weak person, hence the name Sick Not Weak. Anyway, I basically just wanted to let people know that no matter what you think you're feeling, never ever think that you're alone in your thoughts, because I promise you that you're not. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm sure I have rambled on enough now, and I want to thank everybody or whoever is listening for taking the time to do so. I totally appreciate it, and my next few episodes will be with guests, and I'm really looking forward to those conversations, learning from them and introducing them to your world. Until then, be well and take good care of yourselves.